in. Okay, people are in. Let me see if we can get up to 20 before we start. Let me just say a very good morning to everyone and thank you for being on time. I'll wait 30 more seconds before we actually start the program. Okay, a very good morning to everyone signing on to our webinar this morning on the International Telecommunications Regulations. It's set a Caribbean perspective, but we really would like to get some Caribbean perspective, not just from the presenters necessarily, but really from the attendees. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we move the program along. My name is Nigel Casimir. Apparently we may have an issue. I see Vincent Roberts raise a hand. Vincent, go ahead, please. Shanae, you may have to let him.
Good morning, Nigel. Good morning, everyone. I was just making sure my screens are okay and all that. So that was not intentional. But it's a great opportunity to say good morning.
All right. Okay, excellent. Very good. All right. Thank you, folks. So yes, I am welcoming all to this particular webinar on the International Telecommunications Regulations. And the intention is for this to be an interactive type of session. It is intended to be the first of our outreaches, I would say, to the Caribbean stakeholders for us to try to determine the value of the ITRs and the utility of the ITRs to our Caribbean stakeholders, the operating companies, the regulators, the governments, and so on. I'll just give you a quick view of the agenda for this morning. It's a relatively simple flow. After the opening remarks, we'll hear from Ms. Shahira Salim, who is the chair of the ITU's expert group on the ITRs. She is from the Telecommunications Regulatory Authority of Egypt. And she will give us the background that we would need. And then after that, I would lead the engagement with the Caribbean stakeholders to try to begin to get the type of feedback that we're looking for in terms of the utility of the ITRs, any challenges, any advocacy you need from us, and so on. So this particular webinar is being put on in collaboration with Canto, because of course the operating companies are the key stakeholders here, who are meant to be the primary beneficiaries of the International Telecommunication Regulations to ensure some sort of order and system in the relations between carriers internationally. So we're very happy to work with Canto. This is something that we do and have done over several years, collaborate with Canto on various initiatives. And the CTU's key role is in harmonizing our approaches to ICT policy and regulation around the Caribbean. So very much this is the intention in terms of the webinar today and the actions that will follow. And pretty much would like to get into the meat of the matter. And I'll invite Ms. Shahira Salim, yes, from the TRA in Egypt, who is the chair of the ITU's expert group on the ITRs, to give us the background that we would need on the ITR. So Shahira, I'll invite you to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Nigel, for this introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me to join your meeting. It's a real honor to present to you the Caribbean Group issues related to the ITRs. Let me share my screen, and I'll share the presentation, and we can start right away. Can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Shahira. I'm from Egypt, as you mentioned correctly, from the Regulatory Authority in International Relations. I currently chair the expert group on the ITRs. This is actually the third expert group on the ITRs after WICIT 2012, and we will get to all of that while we are going in the presentation. I'll give you a background on the issue. I'll talk to you a little bit about why I believe the ITRs are important, historical background about the WICIT 2012 and its outcomes, and currently I call it post-WICIT, after WICIT, what we have so far. And I also shared some links at the end, which you can follow, and for anyone who is interested and who would like to get more details and more information, you can find them.
Just 1 second, Shahira.
Sure.
Shania, I don't think we're recording.
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay. All right. Please go ahead, because I wasn't seeing the red thing, you know?
No
okay,
problem. No problem.
Yes.
So this is a timeline of when it all started. The ITRs, or the International Telecommunication Regulations, they define the general principles for the provision and operation of international telecommunications. They go as back as 1865, and they were not called that ITRs at the time, but they basically defined international telecommunications. And then I'll skip the timeline and go directly to 1988. 1988, we had the WATAC conference in Melbourne, Australia, and it created the ITRs, and they came into force in 1990. They were left unchanged until 2012. So that's quite a long time. Until 2012, there were no revisions to the ITRs. And you can imagine from 1988 until 2012, the development in telecommunications and all the new technologies that we have. In 1988, we were not still we still had the incumbent operators. We did not have private operating agencies, so the world was quite different. And therefore, we decided that it is time to modify the ITRs, and we did that during the World Conference on International Telecommunications 2012 in Dubai. And since then, after WICIT 2012, 3 expert groups on the ITRs were established in order to review the ITRs. So why are the ITRs important? The ITRs establish general principles on the provision and operation of international telecommunication services that are offered to the public. They facilitate global interconnection and interoperability. They underpin harmonious development and efficient operation of technical facilities. The ITRs promote efficiency, usefulness, and availability of international telecommunication services. They are a treaty-level provisions, which means that they have to be signed by the member states of the ITU. And these treaty-level provisions are required for international networks and services. So to sum it up, the ITRs underpin how we communicate with each other by phone or computer, with voice, video, or data, and across the globe. The 1980Rs and 1988 ITRs, I apologize, they were not limited to telephony. Actually, we can see that they enabled the growth of the internet. And why is that? If we look at the definition of telecommunications according to the ITU constitution, you will see that in the constitution, telecom is defined as any transmission, emission, or reception of signs, signals, writing, images, and sounds, or intelligence of any nature by wire, radio, optical, or other electromagnetic systems. This is according to the ITU constitution. Many can interpret this to include at least some parts of the internet, but not. But as you may be aware, there are always discussions and negotiations and controversies on such a definition, so that it does not include the internet. Many can interpret it as it can lead to the internet. In other countries, this definition, the explanation that it includes some parts of the internet is not relevant. So WICET 2012, WICET is the conference. So was it a success or a failure? Let us see. During WICET 2012, there was no full consensus. And as we expect that in any international conference, we expect to have agreement and to have a treaty that is signed by everyone, all member states that are attending this conference. But this desired goal was not achieved. There was no full consensus. There was a split among the membership, unfortunately, which resulted in a vote. And there was actually media coverage, which was a little bit quite inaccurate because it was influenced by some misinformation. There was. I remember I read articles that with the title "Countries are gathering in Dubai to shut down the internet or to control the internet," but it is not. It was not like that at all. So people were afraid of the ITRs. However, there were quite some success, if we can look at it that way. There was active participation from everywhere in the world. Most of the treaty is not controversial. Only a little, some parts of the treaty were not agreeable, and this is what led to that we didn't have any consensus. We identified lots of issues. There were lots of discussion, and it was agreed to continue the discussion with a resolution to the treaty that says that the ITRs need to be reviewed. So I'll give you some numbers about the WICET. We received 1,257 proposals from member states, more than 1,400 delegates from 151 member states, 150 hours of official conference meetings on site. It was we worked weekends, day and night. It was a lot of working hours. And finally, the final acts were signed by 89 countries out of the 144 member states that were present and having the authority to sign. So it is more than half more than half the present member states signed the treaty. However, this still results in a split. We did not have full consensus, and this, of course, creates some dilemma and some a lot of dilemma. And the fact that not everyone is bound by the same treaty can lead, of course, to some how do you say, problems.
Yes.
So ITU as a global convener, we can skip that one. Yeah. We had a strong divergence on some topics. During the preparatory process, there was a huge preparatory process to WICET. ITU established a council working group to prepare for the wicket. And before that, there was an expert group. So it was a long preparatory process with the participation of most of the member states who were interested. And we had something combined that we took to Wicket 2012. Government and market forces were represented at Wicket. And the discussions about internet governance, they revealed the full complexity of this issue. So it was clear during Wicket 2012 that many member states did not want to have internet governance in the international treaty. Wicket 2012 was, you can say it was one of the most open and transparent treaty-making conferences ever held. The decision-making sessions were publicly webcast, and back in 2012, this was new. There were social media and interactive briefings. 23 years ago, this was also new, and it was a multi-stakeholder conference. We had government, we have the private sector, and the civil society, all were present in the negotiations. So the outcomes. The new ITRs, as in the 2012 ITRs, are not restricted to telephony. The old ITRs as well, as I mentioned when the definition about telecommunication. The new ITRs, they cover authorized operating agencies and not just the recognized operating agencies, but only with respect to international services offered to the public. There is no treaty text explicitly mentioning the internet. So there was lots of worry about internet governance and that governments are going to shut down the internet, but there was no treaty text about the internet. The internet governance was mentioned in a resolution that is attached to the treaty, and the resolution the resolutions in the ITRs are not binding the way the treaty is binding to the member states. It provides encouragement to the member states. It invites the member states, but they do not bind the member states. There was explicit recognition of human rights. There were new provisions to support the consumer, for consumer protection, new pro-competitive provisions, investment provisions, and there was a recognition of the divergent views on the internet matters and that there is a need to discuss this further. So I'll give you the articles in the 2012 ITRs. These are not the exact names of the articles, but this is the content of the articles. So there's a preamble, there's a mention of human rights. Article 1 is about the purpose and the scope. Article 2, definitions about the topics that are arising in the ITRs. Article 3 talks about the right to communicate at good technical quality. It's about quality of service. It's about misuse, calling line identification, traffic exchange points. Article 4, international telecom services to be made available to the public. We included new provisions on roaming, transparency, quality, and competition. Article 5, emergency telecommunication. And we had our new articles about security and spam, Article 6 and Article 7. So spam is the article is not called combating spam. Actually, it's called unsolicited bulk information. We had an article, the accounting article, accounting rates. Instead of Article 6, it is now Article 8. It includes also commercial agreements, which encourages investments. Article 9 on suspension of services. We have two new articles. We have Article 11 on energy efficiency and e-waste, Article 12 on accessibility. And the Article 13 on special arrangements, it was also in 1988. And in my opinion, this is one of the most important articles of the ITRs because it confirms that we have the ITRs, but operating agencies and member states may agree together using special arrangements and commercial agreements. You don't have to, this is a way out for if you can look at it that way. We have 5 resolutions attached to the treaty, and as I mentioned, the resolutions are not binding to the member states. Measures for landlocked developing countries, a globally harmonized national emergency number, fostering an enabling environment for the greater growth of the internet, and this is the only resolution that was controversial. It was proposed by some member states, and there are other member states that they disagreed on having this resolution. We have an article on the periodic review of the ITRs, and this is, a resolution on the periodic review of the ITRs, and this is the resolution also that supports us in further discussing, establishing the expert groups on the ITRs after WICIT 2012, and the resolution on the International Telecommunication Service, traffic termination and exchange. So as you might be aware, we currently as I mentioned, 89 countries out of the 144 present signed the ITRs, and the rest didn't. How does this leave the situation? The new treaty entered into force in January 2015. There's a legal dilemma. You can see we have two versions of the same treaty. The 1988 treaty is still in force because those countries that signed the 1988 treaty and did not sign the version of 2012, they are bound by the 1988 treaty. So the new treaty binds the countries that have agreed to be bound by it. They are parties to the treaties, to the new treaty, the 2012 treaty. And the old treaty binds only those countries that did not sign the 2012 treaty. So how are we going to measure the relation between countries that signed the 2012 treaty and they are bound by the 2012 treaty and those who did not sign the 2012 treaty? Therefore, the relation will be governed by the 1988 treaty. And during the first expert group that was established after WICIT 2012 in 2016, I believe. Yes, it was. We had one of the discussions, a major part of the discussion was what kind of legal conflict is there in having two versions of the treaty? And the ITU legal advisor informed us that there is no legal conflict. Legally, this is it's fine. It's not a problem when you talk about it legally. However, there are other difficulties. There are other problems. There's other conflict. Pragmatically, the point is that we agreed in 2012 to review and revise the ITRs because they were obsolete. This means that the 1988 ITRs are obsolete. So how are we going to move forward with the relations when we are dealing with an obsolete treaty? So the fact that we agreed to revise the ITRs in 2012 means that the version of 1988 is already obsolete. So pragmatically, it's a bit difficult to work together, for different member states to work together and to actually utilize the ITRs. In addition, the fact that there are two versions of the treaty is not the best image for the ITU as a UN organization with the purpose of finding consensus between the member states. So these, in my opinion, are two of the most difficult dilemmas of having two treaties. So the provisions of the new treaty do not apply to the countries that do agree to be bound, that didn't agree to be bound by it. These provisions include transparency of mobile roaming prices, accessibility, energy efficiency and reduction of e-waste, cooperation to combat spam. So these are new provisions that are actually for the citizens of the countries that are non-parties to the 2012 treaty. They will not be able to benefit from those provisions. So I'll talk a bit about the post-WICIT 2012. As I mentioned, there were 3 expert groups created. I'm currently chairing the 3rd expert group. It was agreed to hold this, to establish the expert group in Bucharest, as per Plenipotentiary Resolution 146. The resolution instructs the ITU Council to create, the resolution instructs, it resolves to create a new expert group, and it instructed the Council to determine the terms of reference of the group. So at its 2023 session, ITU Council approved the following terms of reference of the expert group on the ITRs. So the EG-ITRs shall continue to review the ITRs, taking into consideration the work of the previous two expert groups. The review may consider, among others, new trends in telecommunications and emerging issues in international telecommunications, which may impact the ITRs. This was also members found this the new trends very important, because the telecommunication sphere is completely changing. Our world is completely changing. We have AI, we have IoT, we have so many new technologies that are impacting our everyday life, which are relevant to treaty level provisions. The review also included empirical data on the current use of the ITRs by operating agencies and or administrations, and the proportion of global telecommunication services which now rely on the ITRs, and the relevance of the ITRs which consist of high-level guiding principles in the current telecommunication environment. Because the ITRs are supposed to be high-level guiding principles. They are not supposed to be too detailed, but we are talking about rules from a high-level perspective, and that address only the member states. So we need to also make sure that in our discussions that the ITRs are talking about they are addressing member states and not the operating agencies. Member states, within their policies and the regulations and regulatory frameworks, they can liaise this with the operating agencies within their member states. So the expert group will present a progress report to Council 24 and 25. So Council 25 is taking place next June, and we will be presenting our progress report then. And the final report to Council 2026 for examination, and to submit it to PP26 with the comments from the Council. So far, we held 4 meetings out of 6. The next meeting is going to be in September 2025, and the 6th will be held in February, March 2026. As I mentioned, the progress report, the next steps are the progress report to Council, and then the final report to Council 2026 and PP 26. Actually, we are in the status, we are currently, there's a draft final report. We have the skeleton of the final report. So some members expect that we could actually finish our work during the next meeting. We will see about that. It all depends how far we can go and how the discussions go. On the way forward, to be honest, and for those of you who have attended our meetings before, there is no consensus. Just like during WICET, we still don't have a consensus. Some member states agree to continue revising the ITRs. Some member states are of the view that there is no need to review the ITRs and we just leave it as is. So we are unable actually to reach some solid consensus. So So the different options for the way forward would include having consensus and holding another WICET to review the ITRs. And this is highly unlikely, because during the expert group meetings, we did not have any consensus on actually revising the ITRs. Some members also suggested to hold a partial WICET, and we could have some consensus on some some issues and hold a partial conference to discuss certain articles and certain provisions, not the whole treaty, because actually there are also financial issues with in relation to the long time that is spent in the 2 weeks that are spent in the conference to discuss the topics. So some members suggested, okay, let us focus only on some provisions and not the whole treaty, because some provisions, they don't need any changes, but while some others, maybe they need further discussions and negotiations. Again, this is highly unlikely, because we don't even have such an agreement. There are actually also ideas to abrogate the ITRs, but this has not been discussed in our meetings yet. But this also will require to review the constitution, because the constitution also mentions that the ITRs are one of the main the four pillars of the ITU, together with the radio regulations and the constitution and the ITU convention. The fourth option is to keep both versions of the treaty as it is today, and we just stop discussing the issue. But this is not helpful, in my opinion. The fact that this is my opinion, that it is not helpful, because we are unable to actually utilize the ITRs as the tool that it is for us. We have it in my opinion, we have a tool, and it is in our hands to use it and make the best use of it the way we see appropriate. And I can share with you also this presentation. These are some links that I think are might be useful. The first link is about the ITRs. It includes the treaty itself. It includes some information about WICIT. So it's a bit general on the ITRs, but in this link you will find the treaty and you can download it. And this is the second link is the expert group on the ITRs. You will find all the meetings and all the contributions that were submitted to our meetings. And as I mentioned, the next meeting will be held in September in Geneva, and we would really appreciate your participation. I was just talking with Nigel about how I understand that the flight is very long and it might be difficult to participate physically, but there is also the possibility of remote participation. And even if you have contributions, you can submit them to the meeting, and you can present them remotely if you would like, if you are unable to attend the sessions in person. So that's it for me. Yes. And I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Shahira. And I do see a question posted in the Q&A. And it reads, since all member states are not represented in the expert group, what is the group doing to solicit input from all member states?
Thank you for that question. So the group is open to all member states, actually. So the group is open. It has been announced. It has been created during Council 2023, and everyone is welcome to join. And we would also appreciate very much if more member states join the meetings. But it is open for. It's not restricted to council members. No.
Okay, I see a hand up, Charles Douglas.
Actually, that was by accident, Nigel, but I will still use the opportunity to ask a question. Very good presentation. Looking forward to reviewing the deck. And in my mind, there is very clear usefulness for the ITU regulations. But my question is, has it passed its relevance? At one time, the ITU would be the voice, right? The ITURs would be the voice for the industry, for the telecommunication industry. These regulations around interconnection and whatever, directly related. Now you kind of have a parallel motive where the internet is where the future is. And what you would consider old type, switch type telecommunications and these the framework has now transposed to the internet, and you're already struggling because internet governance organizations are saying the ITU has no basis for coming into this space to try to regulate it or provide these guiding rules. And that's ultimately the problem, because there is a convergence of all the technologies. We in the Caribbean are on the receiving end and are struggling to around arrangements on the internet with respect to price or access or equity or merit, impacting us significantly, right? Because most of the transactions are moving from the circuit switches, from the general type traffic that we're used to the internet, to IP. So that's my issue. As I listen to you, then the treaty is not binding because it needs to filter down into the regulations of each country, right? It's high level, 60,000 feet high. Countries have to adopt it to form regs within their jurisdictions, right, to be legally binding. The extent to which that is done or not, it may have little value. And then there's also the opt-out clause where you have these special arrangements and so on. So I know I've said a lot, right? I'm just saying, high level conceptually, it's very relevant. It does have guidelines, pathways, it's instructive, but I'm not feeling it as it apparently was 10, 20 years, 30 years ago. I'm happy to hear your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Charles, for your comment and your intervention. You are absolutely correct. And this is where the problem lies. And this is where the dilemma is, that when it comes to internet governance, ITU is unable to, or you don't, other internet governance fora, they don't want the governments to have the control over the internet, and understandably so, of course, because the purpose of the internet was for it to be open to everyone. Yet especially with the new technologies that are arising, everything, as you mentioned, Charles, is related to the internet. Everything is interconnected, and the internet, just regular telephony, is almost obsolete. You rely on the internet in everything, and this is where the discussion goes, and this is where the discussion stops also. It's true, and I totally understand why there are some member states in our meetings that are refusing to further discuss the ITRs, because it's not in the interest of their operating agencies, of the idea of the new technologies. It's understandable, of course, but I always believe that the ITRs are a tool, and we need to try to reach somehow consensus and include the minimum that can be acceptable to everyone. I know it's very difficult, and we are unable to reach this also in my expert group. I assure you, it's very difficult. But yes, thank you very much, Charles, for your comment.
Shahira, one of the things you mentioned, the expert group was tasked to do, was to collect empirical data on the use of the ITRs and so on. Have you been getting that from members of the expert group or from anywhere else?
Yeah, thank you, Nigel. This is a very good question. Yes, this is one of our tasks, and we, of course, always depends on the members and the participants in the expert group. So some participants sent out to the operating agencies in their countries, like a questionnaire or surveys, and we received both. For both opinions. Some operators mentioned that the ITRs are useful, and that they see a need to review the ITRs, and some operating agencies mentioned that they don't use the ITRs in their policies at all, and they don't see any use for the ITRs. So we received both options, but the number of those surveys was not high.
Was not many, you said?
Yeah, it was not many.
Yeah.
We only a few surveys.
Right. Okay.
But if you would like to do such a survey, please go ahead, and
Yes.
you can send the results to the expert group in September.
Okay. There's another question about the two treaties in effect. What efforts are being made or have been made to encourage the states that have so far opted out of the 2012 treaty to sign on and to ratify the terms of the newer version? Since it's coming into effect, have any member states shifted their position with respect to the later treaty? So I guess the question is, since WICET 12, have we had anyone else signing on, and whether any efforts are being made to encourage countries?
Okay, yes, I am actually, just a moment. I was trying to check there. Okay, in the link to the WICET page, I believe maybe 2 or 3 member states acceded to the ITRs after WICET 2012. But the efforts that were made to encourage members to join the ITRs, so it's a treaty. It's a treaty, and we held the conference was held. ITU organized the conference in Dubai in 2012, and most of the member states were present during the discussions. So the kind of efforts that were done, we established, ITU established the expert groups, the 3 expert groups, and those who are interested in the issue, they can participate. But it's not like it requires promoting the signing of the ITRs, because it's a treaty and it's out there, and members already participated in the conference, and they know about it, and the positions are also usually regional. So it's regional consolidated European position, or a regional African position. So usually it's the regions that discuss together, as you are doing here today in your meeting,
right.
and I'm really appreciative of that. Yeah, so truly I am.
Right. Okay. Well, we did follow a bit of the council work, your expert group meeting during that week or 2 weeks of council working groups. Let me just put a question to my audience here. 1 second, if I could get this right. Okay. Yes, this is a consultation in the Caribbean. And like you said, part of the expert working group's task was to try and get empirical evidence as to what extent these things are being used. So really what the CTU is trying to determine is, what is the degree of reliance on the ITRs by Caribbean operators in their network operations nowadays? I mean, I used to work for a telco in Trinidad and Tobago, and involved in the days of telephony and international relations. And certainly the 1988 ITRs were pretty much the Bible in terms of things like international settlements and negotiations and so on. But as has been said, a lot of this has moved onto the internet now, where those provisions don't really apply. They're using special arrangements or commercial arrangements between the operators. So for my audience, basically, we are trying to determine the degree of reliance on the ITRs by Caribbean operators today. Are there, well, it's misspelled, THERE. Are there any operational or administrative challenges being faced that would benefit from streamlining of the situation with the ITRs? And, instead of having these two treaties, the 1988 and 2012. Is that causing a problem for us here in the Caribbean at all? I have to say that, no one has brought any particular issue to the CTU, but it might not necessarily get to the CTU, but it might get to the national operators. And are there any particular points of advocacy that we want our member states to advance in these expert groups or in any negotiations that might be associated with the ITRs? Right, that's basically what we're trying to do. And the purpose of today's webinar is really to introduce the issue in a kind of comprehensive way, engaging with the relevant stakeholders so that they can understand what the situation is. And we at the CTU Secretariat are going to be continuing the outreach beyond the webinar to basically try to determine the answers to these questions. Is it important to us here in the Caribbean? Are there any particular points that we need to push in the expert group or in the negotiations to come? What we have in mind in terms of after the webinar is facilitating further regional feedback. We do plan to circulate a questionnaire, and responses from the operating companies would be our primary requirement, right? Are our operators having any problems in their international network operations that could be caused by the current situation with the ITRs? So we plan to circulate a questionnaire and continue regional consultations by correspondence or by using a web form, for example, a place where everyone can come and basically put their comments and share information. We have open channels of communication with the CT Secretariat as well. Operating companies or regulators could communicate with the CTU Secretariat directly. We'll do research from other authoritative sources. And the intention is, since the next meeting of council is in June, and we may have some of our member states taking part in that. In the short term, we plan to circulate a brief from the CTU Secretariat, basically summarizing the issues and hopefully any feedback from our stakeholders in the Caribbean in response to our questionnaire or other outreach methods that could be put into that brief for the information of our member states participating in council, and for the information of member states for participating in further meetings of the expert. All right, so that's basically where the CTU Secretariat is coming from with respect to this webinar and what we would propose to do afterwards. So what I certainly would like to get coming from our audience, though, is maybe some preliminary feedback on whether the ITRs is impacting current operations or the extent to which it might be impacting current operations. So let me stop there and see what comments we might have. I see a comment from Craig Nesty in the chat. Is it important here in the Caribbean? Well, if it was, wouldn't the Caribbean operators and regulators already sort out the ITRs? The presentation mentioned It was largely redundant for an extensive period of time. During that time, the impact on the region was minimal, so I don't think you're asking the right question. So what is the gap in the Caribbean you're trying to address by having us focus on the ITRs? It's not really a gap. It's really trying to answer that question. I mean, and should I say, getting the empirical evidence that would support some of the opinions expressed, right? So it's an outreach, basically trying to get feedback from the operating companies and regulators, policymakers, as the case might be in the Caribbean, actual responses that we can say, well, we've gotten from on the ground. I see Charles.
Hi, can you hear me, Nigel?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good, good. So great discussion. So the question in my mind, and I heard Craig's question and comment, would be, as the Caribbean players community, how would we want to support the ITU and by extension the ITRs so that the Caribbean get benefit? Is this a vehicle through which we can say to the expert group, look, here are our challenges, these are things we would like the ITRs to address going forward? That's one. And the second thing is, given the maturity of our markets, I think much of the high-level ITR guidance has already been adopted and incorporated in our legislation for the most part. And it's now to get to the next step to address, to Nestie's point, gaps or what is required for us as a region to move forward in this space. So maybe the focus need to be flipped. It's not so much, because if you look at all of these things, rights and obligations, access, accounting, security, fraud, good, I would think that given our sort of first-rate telecoms in the region, for the most part, we are conforming with the ITRs, high level. But there are needs which need to be addressed given the changing nature of telecommunications, ICT, internet. And we would love to support the expert group in getting to some of these solutions. That's how I look at it.
Thank you for that. But I'm saying we need to be as specific as possible in identifying these needs. And this is an attempt to do so, to identify those needs. I'm wondering, for the persons who are on the call who might be involved in network operations today, do any of your international traffic arrangements rely on the ITRs, or is it a separate commercial arrangement between operators? That's basically the question. And
I would say, Nigel, I would say the question would be different, right? Because again, I think a lot of these factors in the current ITRs, the question then would be, do those principles basically extend to the internet, Sharia? That's it. So in principle, we are observing those, the quality, the accessibility, the interoperability, the accounting systems and the like in the old framework. The question is, if the ITRs would just say, yeah, these also apply to internet traffic, right, for example, if that were possible, then it would put everything under the umbrella, and then we would be empowered in our own regulations to utilize it in whatever fora that we have. The challenge as we started from the outset was it excludes the internet. So you see, you're asking the right question, and our answers, I think, intuitively would be yes. because that's how we've been built. It started that way, and the Caribbean, more for the most part, we conform, all our regs conform with those principles at 60,000 feet high. We need more things including under the umbrella. That's the question. That's really the question. And that's the gap.
Shahira, you wanted to intervene.
Yes, thank you. Just to comment on your question also, because you asked if the operators use the ITRs or if they use the commercial arrangements. However, using commercial arrangements is actually
ITR.
Using the ITRs. So the fact that operators do use the ITRs, it is the commercial arrangements. It is the ITRs that under article, I think it was 10. I forgot the number of the article that gives the possibility to use commercial arrangements. That's it. Thank you.
I think it's 13, or it might have been 13.
I forgot the number.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think that's the challenge there. Charles is saying that we use the principles, and as Shahira said, there is a great resistance to associating the ITRs with the internet, right? And that's where the consensus has kind of broken down. So it'll be a question of finessing it such that not that it applies to the internet exactly, but the ITRs already, as Shahira just said, makes provision for commercial arrangements or special arrangements, as it might be the term that they actually use. So what is happening today, one could argue, takes place under the rubric of the ITR. But we still have a situation of two documents in existence, you know, and how do we deal with that? There is another comment from Craig Davis. He's from Bermuda. The challenge about whether or not there is a reliance on the ITRs may be more relevant for a new entrant to the market. Existing commercial interconnection arrangements, generally rely on the ITRs in one form or another. So you're saying it might be more impactful or relevant for new entrants. It's interesting. And there's a question for Shahira. What are some of the issues or gaps that other developing countries would like to see addressed by the ITRs? Have you heard any of that coming forward in the expert group discussions from developing countries based on the membership feedback surveys conducted so far? I guess, yes, that question for Shahira. Have you heard of any issues being brought forward by developing countries otherwise and in the Caribbean?
Thank you very much, Michelle, for your question. So first of all, with regards to the surveys, you can see the surveys and the results on the expert groups page, and it's already in the link that is shared in the presentation. With regards to the issues that developing countries would like to see, we received contributions about new and emerging trends in telecommunications ICT environment. For example, artificial intelligence, IoT. So these are some of the contributions that we received that some member states see are relevant and they need to be included in the ITRs. We also received contributions related to LEO satellite constellations, which some members are of the view are important to be included in the ITRs. In addition to the already existing 2012 treaty that includes issues related to cybersecurity, spam, and these are not the names of the articles, but they are about spam and cybersecurity. These are some issues that developing countries are of the view are important to be included in the ITRs. Transparency of roaming prices were very important also for developing countries, and they are already included in the 2012 ITRs. So these are some of the issues that members are interested in, and all the written contributions can be found on the page of the expert group. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Shahira. We are indeed at the top of the hour. I think we should probably bring it to a close at this point. I've explained what the CTU Secretariat plans to do next in terms of further outreach. I would like to actually thank very much Shahira for her participation here today. I think the background that you provided has been excellent to the discussions, and it will help to inform our further work. We've recorded the webinar today, so it should be available via the CTU's channels for persons with whom we engage in the coming weeks and months, so that they can always go back and get the same background. So we will attempt to draw out some specific feedback from our stakeholders here in the Caribbean over the next several weeks. And I'd also like to thank Canto for the collaboration and for their communication with their membership. I think the mixture in the audience today helped to drive the discussion, and I look forward to the various collaborations that will take place, and I hope that today's event would have smoothed the way for us to get the type of feedback that we need. The end result should be, or is hoped to be, greater input from the Caribbean in the work of the expert group, and also in informing our participation at the ITU Council sessions. So I'll bring the webinar to a close at this point with great thanks to everybody and everyone who attended, and to Shahira and Canto in particular. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All
Bye.
right. Bye all.